podcast, and I'm excited like I am every Thursday, and you should be too. So please make sure that you're sharing this show today because we have a another great guest who's very powerful, and so you want to make sure that you're sharing this message or sharing this show with the circle of your circle of people because again, the Black Podcast is about knowledge and making relevant connections and sharing the good news. And if you're just keeping it to yourself, then you're not doing your part with the Black Podcast. So we want to make sure that you are sharing the video here with our special guest that we have today. We have Pastor Kenneth, and he all that in a bag of chips. I just want to let y'all know right now. I don't know if y'all ready, but it's cool. We are here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Time, and my name is Dr. Sherelle Hobson, and I'm a student athlete resilience coach and a athletic program enthusiast. And I have a great passion for our, of course, athletics, but then our young men within the educational system. And so I've always wanted to make sure that I was being productive and being effective with the skills that I have to help other coaches create systems within their program that their kids can be successful. And we're not just talking about being successful on the field, but being successful in life. And we hear the same story over and over and over about our young Black males and the things and the struggles and challenges that they have within the educational system. So I decided in 2016 that I was going to make a change and do something about it. And so I got my doctorates in sports administration and leadership, where my focus was on African American males and the effects of athletics on their educational plans. And so I just had the honor of teaming up and linking up with this partner of mine, Mr. Streak, who has an extensive background in social work. And so we just more, but it is a mentorship and leadership program. And so again, welcome to the Black Podcast and my co-host here, Mr. Streak.
All right. I just like to come in and try to be able to play on the sand of the beach of greatness that this woman is. Hey guys, whenever you're out here, especially in the Black community, we're seeking to bring about some type of change in one way or another. But one thing that we have a bad habit of is trying to go solo. And I've learned over the years that you have got to find people whose vision aligns with yours to go out and become the masses that can impact the masses. So I started back in 2012 in the child welfare field, and I started to see things that didn't sit well with my heart. I started to see young men, specifically young men, but young women as well, of color that were aging out of the system without the skills necessary to go out and transition successfully into life. And I went to administration, and I was given a reason that funding was an issue. So that's why the programs and services weren't in place. Now we're in Miami, Florida, and I'm thinking all this wealth around us, but there's no money for these kids. So I decided, you know what, let me go back home to Mississippi, work on my master's degree, get a couple extra letters behind my name, because it seemed like they listen a little bit more when you have a couple of extra letters behind your name. So immediately I helped start a social business. Next year, a nonprofit organization, a mentoring program the next year, and it's just continued to go on and on and on. And eventually I met this young woman, Dr. Sherelle Hobson, but she wasn't Dr. Hobson at the time, but she has accomplished that throughout the years. And being able to join up with her, we've just brought our forces together. And we're looking to continue to bring more and more individuals like today's guest to you to show the spectrum of greatness that we have in the Black community. And not only for the Black community, but for the world to see the greatness that we have and more understand the fact that we're not a monolith. We are different in many different ways. And when we bring those differences together, we can be so powerful in impacting that next generation. So without further ado, our guest for today, Pastor Kenneth Sullivan Jr. How is it going?
Hey, it's going well. Good to be with you all this afternoon.
The feeling is mutual.
Yes, y'all are doing some great things.
Thank you so much. And, I told Brian, I said, we gonna get him on the show. He was like, you think so? I'm like, I'm gonna get him on the show because you're just such an inspiration to so many people, including myself as well as Brian. And so it's nice to not only just see a video of you, but have a real genuine conversation about who you are and your story. And as I mentioned before, we know that our story is what creates the glory. We know that, behind every glory, there's someone has a unique story. And sometimes we feel like our story is not, important enough. You always hear people say, oh, well, nobody wants to hear about what I've gone through, or nobody wants, but it's like, we all need to hear, because you never know who needs to hear your journey. And so we are so interested in knowing more about you, and then going into your gift. And when you made that transition. So if you can just talk to the audience about who you are, where you're from, and kind of the dynamics of your family, how you grew up, and to start from the very beginning with us.
Yeah. So good. I'm glad that you all reached out, and I'm glad that we could be together and kind of share. And I hope that you all's audience benefits from this conversation. I am a native of Indianapolis, Indiana, born and raised here in the Midwest. And so growing up here in Indianapolis, went to public school my entire life. I am the son. My father was a pastor, and he started a church when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Seeing that firsthand and him founding a church, it created in me a desire not to be a pastor. But as faithful I am, I'm pastoring. So, but it was a journey. It was a journey. Born and raised here on the east side of Indianapolis. As most young men, kind of made mistakes, kind of found my way, things like that. Um, got in some trouble when I was 15 with the penal system, avoided being sent to boys' school. I did go to juvenile, was on house arrest. Got involved in the streets and in drugs and those kinds of things as a teenager. I was able to graduate high school, though, convinced my friend who, we kind of ran the streets and got involved with drugs as early as 14, 15 years old. And convinced him to go to night school. So we went to night school, convinced him he was going to drop out because he was actually making so much money with drugs. But I convinced him. I said, man, listen, you can do this. Night school is easy. We graduated, finished night school. He was killed 3 weeks after we graduated high school, 1995. And so to hear of how you started your non-for-profit, I've started a non-for-profit having dealt with the trauma and the pain and reality of, violence firsthand with him. And of course, any of us who grow up in an urban setting, we're no stranger to violence. It's a part of, growing up in an urban setting. So I dealt with grief as a teenager and didn't know how to handle the grief. And so I went deeper into drug use. I'm a barber by trade, so I was successful at graduating also with my barbering license at 18. And so I had that option and I had that off ramp, so to speak, coming out of high school that I could have that career where I worked for myself as a barber. But at the same time, you're still inextricably tied to the street and street dealings and all those kinds.
Fast money.
Absolutely, and especially if you have an addiction yourself. So, believe it or not, now my addiction, let me just put it out there, was weed. I wasn't on heroin or crack or nothing like that.
Because they will flip it around on you, right?
Yeah. But I understand addiction. I understand people who, and I had a lot of peers who fallen into those pitfalls. So I went into rehab when I was 21 years old. And I realized that if I didn't change my life, then I wouldn't live. I mean, I really felt death on the back of my neck. So I went into rehab, but it wasn't rehab that changed me. My goal was to get free from the drugs, but still engage in all the other things that I was doing and just not have an addiction. But when I was there, the Lord arrested me. And so I gave my life to Christ at 21 years old in a drug rehab. And so I stayed for 3 months because I wanted to get really clean and be sober. And I knew I was going to be thrusted back into the environment I was so familiar with. And I wouldn't have the strength to resist a lot of things I was used to being a part of. So, I got my faith up, read my Bible, prayed, and I went back out and I started my own salon that year. The same year I was in the church and, following after God. And so I wanted a wife. I needed a wife. So as I prayed and I prayed, long story short, God led me to the woman who is now my wife. We've been married for 21 years. We just celebrated 21 years. We have 3 children. My daughter's birthday is today, and my oldest daughter, her birthday is today. And we're going to celebrate her birthday in a couple hours. But I have a son, I have another daughter as well. And so that's kind of the long and short, but to give you some details in between, when I first gave my life to Christ and I started my business, I wanted to be around some other young believers. I had to go through the whole detox process. And when I say detox, life had been, involved with so many different other things. Now it's like, those aren't the things I engage in. So now I have to find some other hobbies and activities, to supplement that time. So I had to deal with some boring nights and days. I had to deal with, really fighting flesh and all that kind of stuff because I was used to being in the world doing a whole lot of other things. But I knew that God was rebuilding me in that season. So I enrolled in Bible college. I enrolled into Bible college. My intention was to go into education. In fact, my major was in education, to be a school teacher. Well, after the first semester, I had another class that second semester, at the start of the second semester, which was homiletics, hermeneutics, and I think those were the classes. So we had to give a presentation. I'm the youngest guy in the class of homiletics and hermeneutics. I'm in there with guys 30 and 40, and here I am like 22 and in Bible college. And so, were you gonna say something?
No, I was just saying, I'm sure that was a challenge. Everybody's sizing you up like, what does this boy know?
Well, yeah, when it was time for presentation, and I was naive, and I was in a new environment because, again, at this point, I didn't want to be a pastor because I had seen a pastor's life, and so many people have assumptions about what it means to pastor, and there's so many different misnomers and different false representations of pastors, driving a Rolls Royce, living in $1 million house, all those kinds of things. And people think, that it's just a career, but it's a calling. It's not a career, it's a calling. So I gave a presentation and he stopped me. He said, you have the gift of teaching. You don't need to be he said, I think you need to change your major. So he became my mentor. And while I was in Bible college, I went back to the barber salon. So I would do hair. I would cut hair. This is after I got saved. I would cut hair during the day. I go to Bible college at night. I would witness to everybody who came in the shop. And, I had so much credibility because guys are like, this, like, we know this guy. Like, he's not doing. So I had credibility to really, their ears. So I would attract people because they knew me from the world. So long story short, I continue with my salon. I grew the salon. I've always been a pastorpreneur. I've always had an eye for business. In fact, I not only have a salon, we have 2 daycares. Our church operates out of 2 campuses. We have a salon. I have a graphic design company as well. I'm an author. I finished Bible college there at that Bible college, and then I went on to get my master's at Indiana Wesleyan. I'm currently working on my doctoral degree right now in, ministry. So, I have a non-for-profit that we're really aggressively going after resources for programs that we have to save young men and save young women and give them alternatives. Right now, we're really working and applying towards some of the grants that are available for technology, so that because we want our young people to be able to compete for the jobs of the future. And I believe if you give young people alternatives and you give them off ramps, they won't be attracted to a lot of the things they're attracted to when it comes to, the things that they're falling for today, which things get progressively worse every generation. When I was growing up, it was gangster rap, and so listen to them, look at what they're doing now is drill, and it's
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And so you do see this kind of downward spiral in our community. And I think those of us who kind of get it and understand, and we've been able to escape some of those pitfalls, though we're not perfect, we made some mistakes, we have an obligation to, save lives and change them. So SAVES is an acronym. That's our non-for-profit, Saving a Valuable Endangered Species. I was really driven to go harder at this particular lane because, like I said, I had already experienced trauma. I'm known in our city as kind of like the pastor, me and another pastor on the opposite side of town. But a lot of the homicides in our city kind of come through. One of our campuses sits between two funeral homes, and we're in a part of town where there's drugs and violence and poverty, food desert, all of that kind of stuff. So we're like an oasis in the desert. So I've done a lot of funerals of young people and young men, young women, some as young as 12, 13, 18, all those kinds of things. And I did a lot of them for free because I wanted the chance to speak into the hearts and minds of our young people, because I realized this is a generation, some of them have never stepped inside of a church. Some of them have never seen a pastor outside of the stereotypical view that they've seen on television or somewhere else. So I want to show them live and in person, there's pastors who really care about y'all. You know, we have compassion. We want to help bring healing, all those kinds of things. So I'm on this platform with you all because I think that it's important for people of like mindedness and like faith to gather together and come to solutions, not only be examples, but exchange information about best practices into what we're doing in our cities and our regions and our areas. Because we're the generation of now. We don't have next, we got now. We up, I saw a post somebody said, I think it was Charlemagne the God. He said, it's hard to believe that we are the adults now. Like we don't
Mm-hmm.
want us,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it's like, wow. So, but I don't look at everything that we're facing right now with our nation, with our community, as something to be discouraged. I actually rise to the occasion. I think there's so much for us to discover and so much for us to find. There's a verse I love. It says, and the people who know their God shall be mighty in the earth and shall do exploits. So I really believe it's an opportunity for us to gain wisdom, use wisdom, and do exploits, and to be able to be the agents of change that we looked up to in years past. So yeah, I know I'm kind of scattered.
No,
All,
you're
No,
good.
you good.
You're good. You're good.
let
You're
me add
good.
also one last thing. We're studying right now my doctoral program, different leaders in Africa. So through Bishop T.D. Jakes, I had the chance to preach at the Potter's House and preach and shoot a show there called The Gospel. And it was kind of the premise of, are you the best preacher we've never heard of, and all of that. So me and four other candidates in 2019, October, flew out. And we had to, so it was like, it was one of the greatest experiences I had to, share all the background and some of the, and there's a lot of details I left out, by the way, for time. But
Oh, you.
to be able to, have that opportunity, have that exposure, and then to learn at his school and to glean from Bishop is just a phenomenal thing. But we have a church, our church, we've built 6 churches in Kenya. Right now, I'm studying leadership all over the continent of Africa. So we're studying leaders like Haile Selassie, to I'm doing a presentation on Jomo Kenyatta, the first president and prime minister of the decolonized Kenya. Nelson Mandela, of course. Our goal, one of the things I'm looking to do in terms of our missions and our international ministry, is to have churches in several countries in Africa. I think that is going, because when we talk about the African diaspora and we talk about, the world getting smaller, and we talk about all these different things, we were in Africa and I saw it when we were there to visit one of our churches, and I went to Kenya for the first time. I saw where the Chinese were coming in and they were paving the roads. And so the Chinese are now filling a void that America used to fill when it comes to leadership. So I'm big on leadership. I'm more than a preacher. I'm more than a business owner. I'm a leader. And I think that and I want to equip our members. I shared last night, I want every person in our leaders to look with the eyes of leaders. Walk into an organization, when you walk in your business, when you go to think about look at how the leader looks at things, to get that mindset to begin to operate in it. So I'm big on leadership. And so I want to add that piece in there, that we do missions, and we have an organization called Better Life Initiative, where we launch churches and we take existing churches and we help build them buildings. So I did a lot of talking.
Wow.
To hear from y'all.
No, you're good. I mean, first of all, I mean, I'm thank you for, again, I knew you were busy, but you busy, like busy for real. And so I appreciate you two taking that time. But when we talk about, a lot of times we look at even within our community, music has changed, environments have changed. And so I've always been in education, like I said, for 16 years. And, I was one of those people just like you. I was always more than a coach. So everybody used to always say, just focus on being a track coach. But I'm like, it's just so much more that I can teach these young girls about life and how to live. And so my faith was so important as a a leader of my program, that my girls can look and say, she looked like us, but she also loves God. And so they, when they would come and have conversations with me, and so, the system tells you stay away from religion, stay away from politics, stay away from it. But I always knew for a very long time, I almost felt like I was suffocating in my own life, because I knew what the truth was, and I knew that he was the truth, but it was also, do you want to lose your job? Do you want to lose your job? And so I would always choose to speak the truth. So when my girls used to come to me about their lives and their problems, and I would say, you need to pray about it. You need to ask God, and I would pray with them. And I remember my assistant coaches used to be like, oh my God, you're not supposed to be praying with the kids. You're not supposed to be. But I just said, if I don't teach, if I don't show them, then where are they going to get it from? So if you can just talk about, when you were that transition of, because people keep you in a box, right? You should be a pastor, talk about pastoring, right? You shouldn't be talking about a business. You shouldn't be talking about doing this, doing that. People want to put you in this box of what they feel like you should be doing. And I don't believe that God wants us, he doesn't let us operate in a box. That's why he lets us live an abundant life, a life of fullness, at whatever that, we're blessed to do. But if you can talk about that transition of what people saw you doing, and then when you decided to make that transition in, for your life, and what that conversation was like when you started to speak life into people, and they were like, Kenneth, the same Kenneth that we used to see on now he talking about God. Like, where did, if you could talk about what that experience was for you, to fight that demon or that reputation during that time.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it. That's exactly what it is, a reputation. I built a brand in the world before the term brand was popular. But you built, you know, who you are. And so I was known for nice cars, just being out and about. People knew me for for all type of different reasons. And your flesh fights the process of becoming who you need to become in the season God is changing you. Even now, one of the
Say that
things,
again. Say that one more time.
your flesh fights the transformation process that you know you must undergo to reach your destiny, because there's a part of you that says, this is who I am. I mean, you think about the Apostle Paul. For those who may not be familiar, Paul writes majority of the New Testament. Paul was not a believer in Jesus Christ, but he becomes the greatest spokesman for him during his time. And Paul wrestled with his old life of Judaism. And he's like, I've got, this distance between the people I was close to. And now I have to kind of embrace people I was told to stay away from and I'm not familiar with. And I've got to go to places where I don't fully know all of their customs and their language. But this is the call of God. And when you're making history, you don't realize it's history. You're just doing what you're supposed to do. So for me, when I look back and I look at all the different plateaus I've been able to reach, and a lot of people would say, I would be cool with just that. Like, like you good. Like I would just be
Trust me,
happy
I know.
to have a but when
Right.
there's, you know what I mean? But when whatever God exposes you to, he wants you to experience. And I've been exposed to too much greatness. So I'm like, okay, now what's up there? Okay, now what's up there? Now what's, so it's like, I can't be content right here. So where a lot of
Right.
people get content in one space, I'm like, I can't. For me, I wanted to do a doctoral degree, but it was like, I got, I pastored at that time before the pandemic. We were doing 3 services and every service was packed. So I'm coming to church. My whole day just on Sunday was running from the first campus to the other one and back to the other one. And then of course, Wednesday, then trying to train leaders. And then, thank God I have a manager, because you can't, now I'll do this and answer your question, because I rabbit trail, but it's some good meat on that rabbit.
Yeah.
But you have to have a great team and staff around you to be effective. You can't do what you do. One of my mentors, Pastor Jeffrey Johnson, here in Indianapolis, he pastors the Eastern Star Church. He shared with me early on, he said, staff to your weakness. Staff to your weakness. Whatever area you're weak in, don't see it as an opportunity for somebody else to fill that void, and you be able to focus on what you're strong in, and you'll be effective. And that's how you build your team, staff to your weakness. To answer your question, was, some of the funny stuff that would happen when I first gave my life to Christ was, I, smoked blunts, we smoked boxes of blunts, swishers, not packs, boxes. So I'm just putting it out there. And so when God broke that habit, these are guys I grew up, these are my friends, we family. But I'm still going around them, and I know, I don't do what they do. And I realized it started making them uncomfortable. For me, it was like, hey man, we still kicking it, but they pass it around. Oh, that's right, you don't smoke no more. So after 2 or 3 times, people, it's kind of a sarcastic thing.
Yeah.
Right, you don't smoke.
Right.
You,
He passing it across your
yeah,
face.
like, now, come on now. Now we just wait. Come on. Oh yeah, that's right. So you don't smoke no more. So after a while, you realize I can't put myself in environments where I'm tempted, or where there's a possibility I could fall and go back to where I was. And, that's trial and error too, because I had tried before, but I failed. And so I realized, I said, okay, we can't have, I got to love them from a distance. But in order for me to become who I need to become, I can't be around that, and I can't be around them. And I had no idea that process, those moments. So what I would say to people who are undergoing change at whatever level, the end is going to be worth the sacrifice, because you can't see a year, 2 or 3 years down the road. What you walk away from will determine what you walk into. And if you can't walk away from certain things and places and people, you'll never walk into the places God has for you. And so life, destiny demands making hard decisions. And so I had to make, I've had to make multiple hard decisions. I've had to fire people. I've had to let people go. I mean, just being frank, I've had to make a lot of different decisions. I've had to release people, all of that kind of stuff for the greater good of what it is God wants to do in my life. So I want to keep, I want to say a moment in my life too. I want to encourage everybody right now who's outgrowing the space and the people you're in. And I'm not, you got to cut people off. But there is a reality that we undergo in evolution at various stages. And you should be constantly growing. Anything that's not growing is shrinking or dying. So you will deal with those moments where you're undergoing that change and that transformation, and it will be uncomfortable for you, and it will be uncomfortable for people around you.
Man, you done shared a lot. You shared a lot of greatness, and I just want to kind of recap a couple of things that you went through. One thing that you mentioned was being having a reputation, but then developing a brand. And I do a course the second 2 months each quarter where I train on branding and marketing. And one of the things that we like to pour into those clients of ours is understanding that you already are a brand, but it's called a reputation until you start managing it. Now, when you start to manage that brand, that's when you can communicate to the world through marketing who it is that you want them to see you as, how you want to be portrayed, but doing so for the benefit of those who you're looking to serve. Now, so many people will get caught up and look at the fact that I have XYZ reputation. So ain't no way in the world I can become like this fellow over here. What's his name? Pastor Kenneth Sullivan. I can't get like, man, you don't know. I've been locked up. I was in juvie hall. How can I become somebody like that? But then they hear your story. Hold up now. You can actually get there when you went through this. And that's one of the things, as you made reference to, when it comes to a lot of our young men in these inner cities, they don't realize that you can make it out. You can make it out. And in 2018, I started my own company because my first few speaking engagements when I came back to Mississippi was in a juvenile detention center. So I started having these conversations with these young men. I'm like, look, you may be here today. You may be known for what you're known for today based off of what your last name is, what your parents did, what your big brother did, so on and so forth. But you can start today to listen to people like Pastor Kenneth. You can start today to listen to people and surround yourself with people like a Dr. Sherelle Hobson and start to become who it is that you desire to be instead of being connected to. And you mentioned this earlier, your flesh. This is kind of what I took from it. Your flesh has a desire to keep hold on what has brought it pleasure up until today. And that holds you back from the purpose that you're meant to serve in the future. And I forget who said it, but someone mentioned that you'll never become who it is that you're meant to be because you're too caught up in maintaining who it is that you were or who it is that you're known for. And we have to be willing to sacrifice that reputation to grow into that which we desire to grow into. And you seem like you've done it flawlessly, man. One thing that I would like to ask is going through that process, getting into the ministry space, how was the acceptance of those who were in the ministry as you were transitioning into that phase? How was their acceptance of where you came from? Kind of talk us through that.
I tell you, there's a number of ways, directions I want to go with that. I realized this once I first started preaching in the barbershop, of course, witnessing to people and going to various places, just sharing. I was big on witnessing and winning the lost because I saw within the church, and you're from Mississippi, you in Houston, so you all are in Bible Belt country. There's churches, all in those areas. I saw that the church was kind of not just traditional, but it didn't seem to have a compassion to reach my generation and people that I knew needed to be saved. And so for me, I've always tried to reconcile what we see in terms of lives being lost in the world, and we're supposed to be about saving them. So for me, it's like we're having a good time. It's like having a party or a feast to yourself, but then the people who need it the most are kept out. So for me, I was always trying to strategize and see how we could get people in who were kept out. And so I was always focused on how to evangelize, how to reach the lost, how to get more people into the church. And so my approach to ministry was different than some others' approach to ministry. And so it was good for the long term, but that again was a season and a period of really being changed and transformed and having to trust God in the area of some of my methodology for ministry. So there were some people who embraced it and some who didn't necessarily understand or embrace my particular approach to ministry. And then, of course, as you, I better be careful. I better hold that back. I don't care what field you're in, you are always going to ruffle feathers or make some people uncomfortable who were content with either status quo or who, quite frankly, may even see you as a threat or competition, those type of things. That exists in every field. I think you look at Jesus. Jesus wasn't crucified by, his ordinary people. He was crucified by people who were benefiting from a religious system. And so when he's coming in, changing, and he's feeding people, they got the buildings, but Jesus had the crowds. He had the audience, and the people were listening to him. They were following, they were chasing him. And so their power was slipping. Their authority was slipping, and they saw this young minister. They're like, we got to do something about him. He's not good for business. He's not. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have to remember it was religious leaders crucified Jesus. So that's a whole other conversation that I'll just tease it and touch and go. So I even the pastor, of course, like every pastor will probably tell you when you take over church, the way I became the pastor of our church. And again, time won't allow me to share everything in detail. So I, in 2005, graduated from Bible college, and my father had approached me. At that time, I was serving as the assistant pastor. And I was actually, like I said, I had a mentor in Bible college. One of the things I was looking to do was possibly, explore going to seminary and maybe taking a church somewhere else and just, helping my dad until I got to that point. Well, he asked me to take over our church. Well, I declined. I didn't want to be the pastor. And so I said, no, I just want some things begin to change, some stuff begin to happen within the church. And a year later, we revisited it, and I realized I needed to take the church. And so since then, we purchased property, 2 pieces of property, it renovated. We got work going on right now at our main location, nonstop lunch. Moved my salon over there. The church began to grow, added services, all of that. So it's all to the glory of God. I don't take any credit. It's been 15 years that I've been the pastor. We're one of the first churches where you see, and I will say this perhaps even in the country. And I saw Bishop Joseph Walker out of Nashville do some of these things, but I hadn't seen what we were doing. And that was to, use our space from Monday through Saturday to operate businesses out of. I've done repast dinners, weddings, of course, leased the building out to other churches, had a Latino church in there. We've leased other little businesses. I've leased to photographers, all those kind of things. Because I saw the building I looked outside the box. I didn't see a church building. I was already in business because, let me put this in there because I need people to understand this. When I became the pastor of the church didn't pay me a dime, couldn't pay me a dime. It was probably 2 or 3 years before I could get anything. I walked away from 30 something thousand dollars standing behind a barber chair to be the full-time pastor because it was just getting so busy that I had to walk away. So we grew the church in so many different ways with the blessing of God on it. So I was wrestling because I didn't have insurance. And this is what people don't know. And they make assumptions, and people, you mentioned the story and the glory. People see the glory, but they don't know the story. And they don't hear the gory part of the story. They hear the story, but there's details left out that if left out. I mean, when we look at the story of Joseph separated, goes to Potiphar's, he's in prison. Well, you don't see the parts where he's crying because he doesn't see his mother again. You don't see the part where he's wrestling with self-identity in a new country where he doesn't speak the language and he's got to learn their language quick because he's Israelite and they're Egyptian. You don't realize he's a slave. We don't see those nights. We just see, and he goes down and he's success. Then he becomes a prime minister. Oh, look at that. You a dreamer. Just hold on to your dream. But how do you hold on to a dream and you got to live through about 17 years of a nightmare? See, that's what people really need now too. And I want to just say that people need endurance, because what happens
Yeah,
if it don't happen overnight? It happens over time. You're not gonna get there overnight.
absolutely. And I know I used to, I remember when I told you I was doing some coaching. And so one day my pastor back in El Paso, um, he came and he said, I want you to speak at the women's conference. And I was like, I don't know the Bible memorized like that, why are you asking me? All the people in this church. And so I said, I just know God from what He's done for me. I don't know enough to tell, to be teaching it, And he said, no, that's exactly what we want. So you're going to be on stage. And I was like, what? Um, but one thing that I used to always be kind of hesitant about speaking at churches because people push you in the box, what a church woman is supposed to look like, what is church, what you're supposed to be doing and what you're not supposed to be doing. Um, and so one thing that I realized, I said, you know what? I said, if all these people truly believe who God said He is, why aren't they living up to that standard? I felt like so many people were waiting or wanting God to do something, do this miracle in their life, right? And so one thing I spoke on at a church was about you're expecting a harvest, but you haven't planted any seeds, you know? Um, so it's like, what do you can't expect something from something that's dry. You haven't even put anything in there, your challenges in life is what nourishes those seeds, so every time it rains, every time it pours, every time a storm comes, those are the things that nourish your seeds that create a harvest. So you have to be able to want to go through, it's like almost like, how bad do you really want it? I know coaches used to always say that, how bad you want it, how bad. And so I always thought about life like that. I said, God, please just put me in alignment with whatever purpose that you have for my life. But also keep me, prepare me, because I believe that a lot of us are asking for things that we're not prepared for. Oh God, give me this. He presents it or presents someone that may give you an opportunity for it, but you do nothing with it. And so with you being able to sow these different seeds in your ministry, people may say, well, what does a barbershop have to do with pastoring? Well, because that's your opportunity. People that come in the barbershop, people barbershop talk. So that's your opportunity for people to speak life, into that. Or why would they have a restaurant? Or why, it's like people want to almost like put God in a box, and make Him limited on what only, preaching within the church walls, and so it's like you can't save people. You got to be able to go out to the masses, so that those are the people that need to see that, oh man, Pastor Kenneth, Sullivan, he ain't got no suit on, he got regular clothes. Oh, he got a background, he got a story. People need to hear those things, especially our youth. If they can't see themselves, through you, your message is not going to get to them. If they're looking at you like, oh man, this dude got on a lavender suit. He can't tell me nothing about, selling no drugs. He can't tell me about my life. He can't tell me about. And so I always tell people, if you're expecting something from God, you got to be willing to plant seeds. And I tell people all the time, no matter what I'm going through, whether it's a storm, sadness, grieving, whatever, I always planted seeds. And I was telling Brian that I've continued to plant throughout the storm, continuing to plant. And so if you can just speak on, when you start feeling, especially as a pastor, I'm sure everybody's coming to you needing, wanting, can you put your hands on my bills? Can you, lay your hands on my car note, but what are you doing in the background so that every month you're not worrying about your car note? What seeds are you planting in your life so that finance is not an issue for you? What connections do you have to people that can help you become an entrepreneur? And so those are seeds that we have to plant if we're expecting something from God, is what I believe. If you could speak more on, you know, how you're continuing to plant these seeds and still feel yourself, because you're still human, right? So with everybody pulling you in all these different directions, what does Pastor Kenneth do during his time to refill himself, so that he can continue to sow those seeds where it needs to be?
Yes, I think number one, pray, and that's the spiritual side. Pray, spend time with God, your devotion, get fed from other ministers, but then I'll say friendships and relationships. It's important to have healthy relationships with people who are whole, who are happy, and people who don't mind complimenting you, and people who care about you, who will tell you, man, you need to rest. You need to take some time off. You're going too hard. You need to slow up. People who will help you see yourself outside of yourself, because you can't look at yourself. You just operate in your space. Then also, vacation, breaks, come up for air. My wife and I, we travel a lot. We go around the world, and that's one of the things that I hate that COVID is kind of taken from us. Now we leave in 3 or 4 weeks to go to Florida, and you have to realize we're in the Midwest. Y'all in sunshiny places, Mississippi, Houston. Hey, let me tell you something. The Midwest, we get 10, 11 inches of snow sometime, all those kinds of things. Our cars don't last as long because all of the salt and all that stuff. So you got to get out of here. You got to take breaks. And no matter where you are, you can live in a tropical place. You can live in a beautiful place and still not take breaks. There are people who live in places where there's beaches and they don't go to the beach. So I think really pacing yourself. One of the things, I was studying Nelson Mandela, and I was studying, as I mentioned, Jomo Kenyatta. One of the things that I've been learning, and it's really hit me, my grandfather is 94 years old. I went to visit him in Tennessee. My father's from Tennessee. My grandfather's 94. I'm 44 years old. I got up last week and the Lord spoke this in my spirit. And what I feel like the Lord was telling me was, if you want to see 94, you're going to have to pace yourself and take your time, or you're going to burn the candle out and you won't be able to see. We all are ambitious. We all are goal oriented. We all go get it and go get it. But what I'm learning is there's a wisdom in pacing yourself and resting and taking your time to get there. And what I'm learning from some of these leaders that I'm watching is that, a couple of them sat in prison for years, but they couldn't change the powers that be. They had no power and they had no money, but they had a mind, and they knew how to take their time and lead in such a way that they were able to change things around them and ultimately win and be successful and effective in what they were doing. But they knew how to take their time. So one of the things that I'm practicing is patience and enjoying the moment, taking in the moment. I heard Robert Madu say this, and he's a preacher I just started listening to. And he said, some of us are so anxious to get there that we don't enjoy here.
Yeah.
And I mean, we know that and we hear that, but he broke it down and, he moved science, and he was like, that's a trick of the enemy. And I'm like, wait a minute. I just left one of our members' house to rush over here, and she just had a kidney transplant. And I'm just, there's so many blessings we have. We don't take the time to really absorb the moment and say, wait a minute, I'm strong enough to go to the refrigerator and get some water on my own. I'm breathing, all of those things. That's take your time, rest, take vacations, get away, unplug the phone, get off the phone. I feel the most freedom when I forget my phone or leave it somewhere for several hours. And I'm like, why am I feeling so good? And I'm like, I don't have that phone. It's like the whole thing.
And I think, Pastor, that is important. Like you said earlier, you don't have to have everything that you need to have. That's why you surround yourself around people. Like your mentor was telling you, surround yourself, with people, or put people in in your business or your organization that have the strengths where you're weak. And so that's, sometimes we need people in our lives. I mean, I have people in my life all the time to tell me, slow down,
Yeah.
and I'll just be like, yeah, okay, whatever. But it does help for somebody to say, hey, don't talk about time. It's Saturday, relax.
Right.
Don't think about, And so it's kind of like a training for us. We're having to feel like we got to go, 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 because that's being productive, right? It's so important when you talk about being present. Because I move so fast that I've been able to accomplish so much back to back to back to back to back. But if you ask me, this is how it was crazy. I went to my college reunion to some of my track colleagues, and everybody started crying when I walked in there, and I was like, "Why is everybody crying?" But they knew that they thought I wasn't going to show up, but my ego and my pride came because they thought I wasn't going to come, so that's why I came. And so I remember sitting there watching all these slideshows of parties and track trips, and I'm in all these pictures, and I remember nothing,
Remember it.
and I just realized I literally was just there, present. But it was almost like I had to build these relationships all over with these girls I ran track with for 4 years. I did not remember anything. One of my colleagues told me, "Do you remember when you were telling me about God and how He's going to give you the desires of your heart? We were sitting underneath the tree." I said, "No, I don't, because I've always just moved so quickly, and it's worked for me to be able to accomplish things. But when it's time for me, I start thinking about how many relationships and experiences that I forgot about
And didn't fully enjoy.
yeah, I didn't enjoy it because I'm so focused on this direction that I don't remember. And so when I started to write my book, and I came out here in Houston, my mentor said, you need to write a book. You need to put all your stuff in a book. And I was just like, I don't have time to write no book. I ain't got time to sit there and read no book. I don't have time, And she was like, you need to write the book. And so as I started writing, I finished the book and I started praying. I said, God, send this person to me. Send this person to me. Help me with this, to help me with that. And it was very clear. He said, you already have those people. I don't need to send you anybody. You've already built those relationships because I don't remember, anybody that I met, because I've been moving so fast, that everybody I needed in my life to help birth my book was already there.
Yeah.
So when you talk about being present, we can get caught up in what the next move or the next place do we need to be, when we miss that present place. And so, but it is hard to stop, and we want to pray on the go. And so one of the things I had to learn was put and I learned that from Mr. Street when I had joined some of his classes a while back before we started being partners. Putting myself on my own schedule, like the first 30 minutes, knowing that you're going to pray, during this time. Even if if you're not praying, you're going to be quiet, you're going to be still,
Right.
because I am so busy looking at my schedule and seeing everybody on there that I didn't even have myself on there, And so I had to be intentional with
Good.
making myself a priority like I do for everybody else. So the fact that you continue to pour and plant those seeds, but also make time to travel and do things, which I'm sure people probably look back and say, Pastor and them gone again, they
Yeah.
gone again. But it's like, I can't pour into you if I'm empty.
Right. 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 And movie buff, by the way. I go to the movies a lot. I'll escape in the theater. I like to go to the very top. I don't want to see
You better
nobody.
not tell them where you're going, because
Yeah, yeah.
they're gonna be there,
Like,
sitting at
I,
the very top.
I try to go all the way out to the complete suburbs where nobody's around.
I don't want people to showing up at the movie theater. We know Pastor gonna go watch this movie. They'll be sitting there waiting.
With a prayer request.
While you're here, can you put your hand on my light bill? But yeah. So I definitely appreciate the fact that you have that balance. One thing, I look at Mr. TD Jakes and all them, and I really enjoy watching pastors who are always very relevant, and you can look at your life when people are speaking, and you do that a lot, where somebody can get a message and say, wow, I can apply that to my life. Or I know that's somebody I can apply that to. When you talk about the enemy, you talk about these challenges that you have in your life. And when you can be vulnerable with your congregation, I think that's so important, because I believe that people tend to forget you're still a human, you know. And so when they're looking at you, it's like, and you're vulnerable. It's easier to make more of a connection with people because they know he's real. How
Yeah.
is that with you? Making sure that you're vulnerable, but not, you know. What is that balance like for you? Like wanting to share your life so people really understand,
Yeah.
but also making sure that you're doing your job, or your gift, or
Yeah.
operating in your gift without being out of line.
Yeah. When you get me, you get all of me. But when it's time for me to break, I'm gone. I'm away. And I think you see that with Jesus. He's there in the moment when the woman with the issue of blood is coming by. She can touch him. He's approachable. You can be. Uh, you can be. I have a saying. You can be approachable, but you can't always be available. And you can. Yeah, I'm approachable, but I'm not always available because people will take advantage of that. And then in addition to that, familiarity breeds contempt. So if you are always around, if you're always available, you're not valued as much too. And sometimes people are strange. They can be fickle. They want you to come see them at the hospital, but they don't want you to stay too long. They want you to grieve. They want you to do the funeral, but they don't want you to be around because we about to turn up. They want you to be at the wedding, perform the wedding, then go. They want you to stop by and see the graduation, but now they need you to leave because my cousin even brought some weed. And they got some drink,
Mhm.
and we don't want to
They
do this.
want you to read this part of the Bible, but don't read
So
the,
yeah,
the last in the beginning part. Just
right,
read this part.
right, right. So you have to understand the balance and understand how to touch and go with people. So I've learned over the years, and of course having a father who pastored and watching what he went through with pastoring people, And that was another thing why, that was another reason why I said, no, I don't want to do that. Because I'm not you. I'm not gonna be like that with if I deal with that. I'm not gonna so I felt like, no, I'm not gonna. But you know, when God gives you an anointing or call for something, especially as a shepherd, he gives you a shepherd's heart. But you can't you know, you can't be intimate with everybody. And intimacy is not, of course, physical intimacy. It's sharing your heart, it's sharing your mind, it's sharing your dreams, your goals, because what people know they can attack. What people know about you, they can leverage, they can use to pull you down. It's a lot to it. So you have to learn
Wow.
how to give enough and then shift and move.
Shift and move.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's just, as we get ready to wrap up, um, obviously so much value and so much of what you share. And I think one thing that people really need to take away, especially in today's day, especially in this dog eat dog world, when you're trying to get ahead, is just really focus on that here and now. Because a lot of us lose relationships. A lot
That's
of us lose so much in life because we see what we want and we don't take care of what we have.
Yeah.
So what we have, even though maybe sometimes what we have needs to go to the wayside to get to what we're going for, but you
Right.
have to be able to have discernment and know, okay, how much time do I need to give to this, give to that, give to this individual, to that individual, and just really just embrace the here and now. There was a story that I heard about this one fellow that just would never take a vacation. And a coworker would always say, "Man, we're about to take a vacation over here. You should put in some time to come with us." "No, I'm gonna wait till I retire. I'm gonna go do this, go do this, go do that." And just continuous year after year after year. The fellow retired, and like a month after he retired, he died.
Yeah.
So he was looking at what is going to apparently you want to happen, and you're not enjoying. What can we enjoy today? Like, what conversation are we having right now? Like, how much love can I pour into this one moment? Because you don't get it back. You don't get it back. And that's one thing that so many of us take for granted, is the fact that there's so many things out there that we don't have yet, but maybe someday we will have. But the time that you have right now, you will never get back.
Yeah.
That is the one commodity that you will never get back. And when you treat it like you don't respect it, actually, there's a movie Will Smith aired in, and I forget the name of it, like Collateral Love or something. And he met time, he met death, and he met love. And time was getting on his case, like, you don't have me for long. You don't know when I'm going to be gone.
Wow.
So you need to respect the time that you have right now.
Yeah.
So, I just love that you brought that up, because it's one of those battles that I sometimes go through with my clients. Whereas whenever we're coaching, we have to visualize where we're going. But if
Mhm.
you don't take care of today, you're never going to get there. So
Yeah.
I love the fact that you share that with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
So
that's awesome, and I think it's such a blessing that you have that entrepreneurship, skills, because I that's a gift. People,
Yeah.
I've always thought, like, how to. My dad, I grew up how to flip money and how to get a house and flip it and cars and this and that, and so when I had these conversations with people, I thought it was regular conversations, and they're looking at me like,
Oh,
you just got some people, and you have to realize some people are 9 to 5. Some people enjoy being employees,
yeah. Yeah.
and that's okay, but you have to surround yourself around people. So if you can just leave us with, I want you to leave two things. I want you to speak directly to that young woman or that woman. And I also want you to speak to that.
You broke up just a tinge. You said young man. Speak to the young.
Okay. So I want you to speak to two different people. The first person I want you to speak to is that young woman. And then I also want you to speak to that young man. So what would you say to them? if they're watching right now that is very relevant at this point in time, if you can place something in their heart or say something, what would it be to those two people?
What I would say to the young man is hear from God. How can a young man keep his way pure? The scripture says he must give his attention to God's word, and that's how he can avoid pitfalls and traps. The entire book of Proverbs is a father speaking to his son. As we approach Father's Day, I speak to young men as a father, as an older brother. Listen to God, follow his counsel and wisdom and the word that is laid out in the scripture, and look long range. Don't go for the quick and the fast. I know we're in a hurried society, but really look long range and map out where you want to be in life and choose the right role models, because we're seeing a lot of artists. We're seeing a lot of flash in the pan. I'm looking at artists who are showing off millions and rappers and other people. And we have rappers that die, but these guys are leaving here so quick and they're dying. And I'm looking at him like, wow, he had like 3 million followers and millions of dollars, but he's gone. So don't choose some of these guys as your role models. Look at people who are living well. My father, I mentioned to you, he has a house in Florida. He bought a 2021 house in Florida, which we going to in 3 weeks to vacate. Looking at him in his life, in his 60s, still riding around a convertible here in the house here. He still got a house here and enjoying life. And I'm like, wow, that's how I want to be, And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what God has for you may take longer, but it will last longer also. To the young woman, I want to say, be wise, guard your heart, for out of it flows the issues of life. Understand that you're not for everybody, but you're still valuable. And I know that you see a lot of, bad choices when it comes to gas and stuff like that. But guard your heart, value who you are, wait for the right relationships in terms of friends, wait for the right romantic relationship. Take your time, grow in God, and follow after him, trust him. I have 2 daughters, and I speak to you like them. Guard your heart, for out of it flows the issues of life. Be wise, be careful, and take your time, and just trust God.
Wow, thank you so much for that. We definitely, needed that. And then, how can we support your ministry? How can we support what you're doing? Where can we buy your books? Let us know where everybody can find you. So we don't want to have to go to the back of the movie theater and look for you. So if you can let us know where we can find you and how everybody can support you, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So NDC Better Life is our church. You can find us online. We're back open for in-person worship for those in Indianapolis area. NDC is our non-for-profit. Of course, I'm LinkedIn. I got 3 or 4 Facebook pages. So, and I saw Dr. Hobson that we look to connect on Facebook. So I'm really trying to push everybody to my public figure page on Facebook. I do a Facebook Live on Fridays and Monday mornings at 7 o'clock. You can find me on IG, on Instagram. I'm on there. I'm on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter a whole lot. And I'm on TikTok. Support my little TikTok. I'm trying to grow my TikTok. That's the next wave. So hit me. I'm trying to work on. How do you find time for all this
That is a full-time job. That TikTok
content?
is taking me forever. I tried one video the other day and then my phone died. I was like, it took me 6 months to do that video and my phone died. I was like, I ain't got time for this TikTok stuff, but that's a full-time job right there. So good luck.
Right. I'm on all those things. Check under my name, Kenneth Sullivan Jr.
Wow. Well, thank you again, Pastor. And we definitely will make sure that we stay connected and continue to support your ministry. And we will be sending you information on what we're doing at HSBA and how, we may be able to help within your community of some of your young men and women, and the things that we're doing and anything that we can do to support your ministry and in what you have going on. We definitely appreciate and will do. And your book is also on your website. Is that correct?
Is on the website. I have 2 books. I have one for dating, uh, just for single women. It's called Rules of Engagement.
Okay,
Strategy.
I'll send you my address so I can get that book.
And then I have one called Love and Verses. And I have a new book I'm working. I forgot to add it. I'm working on a new book. I'm working on a book right now that should be due at the top of January 22. So yeah, look for that.
Now,
Awesome.
what's the website again?
The website is Ken Sullivan Jr. Ken E. Sullivan Jr.
All right. Well, we want to thank you again, Pastor, and just continue to doing God's work because you are doing an amazing job. And it's going to be a blessing to continue to watch what he does and what you're doing in your ministry and all your different projects. And when it all comes together, we're going to all sit back and just say, wow, but continue to be an inspiration to young men and young women, especially within our community, because we need more men like you that have that balance, that can love God, love his family, still be the man that, he wants to be and desire to be, and just being productive, doing all three. I think a lot of people don't have that balance. And so the fact that you do, we definitely appreciate you, and please continue to continue to work and operate in your gift because you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Pleasure hanging out with y'all. And I look forward to the great things you all are going to be doing in the future too. And I pray God's best success over your lives.
Thank you.
All righty.
Yes,
Take care.
indeed. Thank you,
All right.
sir.
Wow. I mean, such a powerful man. And I just love his balance. I mean, the fact that he just showed up as is, it just
Mhm.
lets you know that, hey, this is who I am. This is all me. He said, when you get me, you get all of me. And so we need more people that are in the space of influence as far as religion and having relationship with God, because we need to see people that look relevant. We need to see people that we can actually say like, hey, I can see myself in that man. And just to hear
Mhm.
his background and not be afraid. Some people are afraid to tell people their backstory because of
Oh,
judgment and stuff like that. So the fact that he can share that with us is just so amazing, to know that he, shared his journey.
yeah, and that's that's how, like you said, that's how you make it to where you can be so much more approachable. Look at him on his flyer, and you're like, okay, he gonna be coming up in here nice and spiffy. Throw on a t-shirt. This is who I am, and that's what it's all about. It makes me think about the difference between that pastor that says, "Come as you are," and then that pastor that says, "Don't come up in here unless you got on your Sunday best." Well,
Right,
maybe this
right.
t-shirt and these holy pants are my
On my
Sunday best.
Sunday best. Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
I
Wow.
appreciate that.
Absolutely. And just seeing what he's doing within the community, and continuing to give back. And you can still love God and be an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Nobody said that you had to separate the two. And I think people, they tend, like I said before, to put uh, God or religion or his gifts or what he gives us in a box.
Yeah,
He gives you multiple things that you want to do that you're good at, as long as you're serving people and it's something
effective.
positive,
Yeah,
then you can't put a limit on what your purpose is in your life, because you don't know what you're supposed to be doing entirely. It could be a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm glad that he kept us encouraged, the young men and young women. Please make sure, everyone, that you are sharing this video. Support him, find his books, buy his books, and just see what he's doing within his ministry and how you can help support that. We're always here every Thursday on the Black Podcast, at 4 p.m. If we ever had to switch the time, is due to a guest, maybe that time doesn't work for them, because we're getting people all over the world. So sometimes we have to accommodate on their times, but we will always be here. So you need to make sure that you are watching for our content, for our graphics on what we're doing on the Black Podcast. And don't forget that the Black Podcast is just a small component, or a component. I'm not gonna say small, a component of the bigger picture. HSBA is the big picture, and we want to make sure that we are connecting our youth with relevant people like Pastor Sullivan, like Jeff Johnson, like Mr. Montgomery, like Lauren Williams. We want to make sure that we have these relationships with these guests, because that is who our youth needs to see and actually speak to. And so please make sure that you're supporting us. You can find our website at wearehsba.com and find out what we're doing within the Black community. Also, make sure that you subscribe so that you can see in the newsletter whatever new projects that we have coming up. And if you are a guest, or wherever you are, if you feel like you can benefit, or your community can benefit from our program with HSBA, please make sure you send us an email. You'll see it on our website, and we'll come out there to you. We don't mind serving the community no matter where it's at. So please make sure, if you can find some benefits in our services, and it can benefit your community or your school or your church or wherever you're operating out of, please make sure that you send us an email. We would love to come out and help out anywhere we can. So our email is info@wearehsba.com. And then our website is wearehsba.com. And so we are so grateful for the amount of supporters we've been getting up to this far. We are approaching our first year anniversary. And so we want to continue to push forward and continue to drive. Again, this is not about us. This is not a popularity test. This is about us making sure that we are doing our part within our community so that we can grow as a whole, and build the community that we want to build. So again, we want to thank you for supporting the Black Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dr. Sherelle Hobson, and Mr. Brian Street.
Yes, indeed. We'll be back here, same place, same time next week. Y'all have a good one. Stay safe and stay cool. If you're down south, stay warm. I guess you're up in those crazy places, and stay safe away from the storms that are coming up on the Gulf.